Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Be sure to check out Dragon Shield for all of the best accessories to protect your decks. TCG Player for cards at great prices while supporting local game stores. And Patreon, where you get awesome benefits for your direct support. 2022 is here. We are so glad to be back, and we have all kinds of awesome announcements. Our Mox Pearl tier is back. If you ever wanted to be on an episode, consider signing up to this tier and show off your CEDH skills. Our Patreon Discord CEDH Webcam League is in full swing this month. We are giving away $1,000 in cash prizes. All you have to do is sign up to Patreon at any tier to gain access. Good luck! We are now streaming on Twitch. Check us out every Wednesday evening for games and much more. If you sub to Twitch, you'll get additional perks like Discord access and the ability to play in our league. In February, we are hosting a CEDH tournament on our Discord. It will be 100% proxy friendly, and there is over $1,200 in cash prizes. Stay tuned for more info. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Ryan piloting Magda, Brazen Outlaw. This deck seeks to cast Magda and make enough treasures to search for artifacts that can help win the game. Ryan's opening hand contains a Springleaf Drum, Gemstone Caverns, Survivor's Encampment, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Spark Mage, Thunderclap, and his London Mulligan is a Bloodline Pretender. Next, we have Mike piloting Yeva, Nature's Herald. This mid-range deck looks to grind value through many different draw engines with the ability to win at instant speed with Yeva. Mike's opening hand contains a Turntimber Symbiosis, Tireless Provisioner, Nature's Claim, Force of Vigor, Wirewood Lodge, Gemstone Caverns, and a Snow-Covered Forest. After that, we have Zach piloting Narset, Enlightened Master. This Jeskai deck seeks to cast Narset and attack, revealing huge spells that can lead to more attacks or extra turns. Zach's opening hand contains a Pact of Negation, Nexus of Fate, Steam Vents, Sacred Foundry, Arcane Signet, Chrome Mox, and a Jeweled Lotus. Finally, we have Cal piloting the partner pair of Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator, and Tana the Bloodsower. This list seeks to cast Malcolm, then look for win cons like Glenhorn Buccaneer to generate damage. Cal's opening hand contains a Rejuvenating Springs, Mana Crypt, Gamble, Red Elemental Blast, Tandem Lookout, Snapcaster Mage, and a Gaia's Cradle. Without further ado, let's dominate dreams of dreary dudes dawdling. Zach wins the Playing with Power rap freestyle battle and gets to start us off. But Ryan and Mike have pre-game actions. Ryan puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Thunderclap. Mike puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield as well, exiling Wirewood Lodge. Zach draws a card for turn and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Pact of Negation. He casts an Arcane Signet and passes the turn. Cal draws a card for turn and plays a Rejuvenating Springs. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts his commander, Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator. Everyone gets immediately worried, and Cal ends his turn. Ryan draws and plays a Survivor's Encampment. He casts Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. He activates Survivor's Encampment, tapping down Ragavan to cast a Spark Mage. With nothing else, Ryan gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Snow-Covered Forest. He passes. Zach draws and plays a Sacred Foundry into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He cracks his Lotus and casts his commander, Narset, Enlightened Master. Now everyone is worried about Zach's commander too, and he gives the turn to Cal. During his upkeep, Cal loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 damage. He draws and plays a Volcanic Island for turn. He casts Tandem Lookout. It enters and soul bonds with Malcolm. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with Malcolm. Zach takes it, and Malcolm and Tandem trigger. Cal creates a treasure and draws a card. All through, Cal passes. Ryan draws and plays a Buried Ruin. He casts his commander, Magda, Brazen Outlaw. He moves to combat and attacks Cal with Ragavan and Mike with Spark Mage. Magda triggers and Ryan creates a treasure. Both take it and Ragavan triggers. Ryan creates a treasure and exiles Breeding Pool off of the top of Cal's library. Finished up, Ryan ships the turn to Mike. Mike draws and plays a Turntimber, Serpentine Wood into play untapped, paying 3 life. He casts Tireless Provisioner. Mike ends his turn. Zach draws and plays a Steam Vents into play untapped, paying 2 life. He moves to combat and attacks Cal with Narset. Narset triggers and Zach exiles Force of Will, Fury of the Horde, Temporal Manipulation, and a Delay. Cal takes it, and in Zach's second main phase, he casts Fury of the Horde for free through Narset. He untaps his creatures and gets an extra combat. He moves to a second combat and attacks Cal again. Narset triggers again, and Zach exiles Urza's Ruinous Blast, Need for Speed, Dovin's Veto, and Enter the Infinite. Woof. Cal takes the damage, and in Zach's third main phase, he casts Enter the Infinite for free through Narset. In response, Cal casts Red Elemental Blast. In response, Zach casts Delay through Narset, targeting Red Elemental Blast. Delay counters and exiles Red Blast with 3 time counters on it. Enter the Infinite resolves, Zach draws all the cards in his library and puts 1 back on top. Next, he floats mana from his rocks and casts Urza's Ruinous Blast through Narset. In response, Ryan and Cal crack their treasures. Blast resolves and exiles all non-legendary non-land permanents. Zach casts Scroll Rack. He activates Scroll Rack, exiling 3 cards from his hand, putting his last card from his library into his hand, and then rearranging the exiled cards. He casts Brainstorm, drawing 3 and putting 2 back on top. He casts Temporal Manipulation through Narset, getting an extra turn. Zach passes to himself. Zach draws and activates Scroll Rack for 1, exiling and rearranging. He moves to combat and attacks Cal with Narset. Narset triggers, and Zach exiles the last card of his library, which is Nexus of Fate. Cal takes it, and in his second main phase, Zach casts Nexus of Fate through Narset. Zach gets an extra turn, and Nexus of Fate shuffles into his library. He presents a loop of attacking with Narset, casting Nexus for free, shuffling it in, drawing it on his next turn, and putting it back on top with Scroll Rack. Using this loop, he can take infinite turns and attack each player over and over until they are dead, and Zach wins the game. Well, that was a pretty quick game, so let's do another, shall we? In this game, Cal brings back Malcolm and Tana, and his opening hand contains an Ancient Tomb, Brainstorm, Lotus Petal, Curiosity, Chrome Mox, Tandem Lookout, and a Glinthorn Buccaneer. Ryan brings back Magda, and his opening hand contains a Mana Vault, Mutavault, Mountain, Liquid Metal Coating, Lotus Petal, Mox Opal, and a Clock of Omens. Mike brings back Yeva, and his opening hand contains a Wild Growth, Jiraga Tree Speaker, Scrib Ranger, Snow Covered Forest, Earthcraft, Elvish Reclaimer, and its London Mulligan is a Noxious Revival. Zach brings back Narset, and his opening hand contains a Narset's Reversal, Spire of Industry, Chrome Mox, Mana Drain, Lotus Petal, City of Traders, and his London Mulligan is a Relentless Assault. And Cal gets to start us off. Cal draws a card for turn and starts off by paying 2 life to cast Gitaxian Probe. He looks at Zach's hand and draws a card. Cal casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Tandem Lookout. He plays an Ancient Tomb as his land for turn. He taps his Ancient Tomb to cast his commander, Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator. The table sighs as they feel major deja vu, and Cal passes the turn. Ryan draws a card for turn and plays a Mountain. He casts Lotus Petal. He follows up with a Mox Opal. He sacks his petal to help cast his commander, Magda, Brazen Outlaw. The table realizes it's gonna be another one of those games, and Ryan ships the turn. Mike draws and plays a Forest. He casts Wild Growth and gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Spire of Industry. He casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Narset's Reversal. Zach passes. Cal draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ryan with Malcolm. Ryan takes it and Malcolm triggers. Cal creates a treasure, and in his second main phase, he casts Brainstorm. He draws 3 and puts 2 back on top. With nothing left, he gives the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Mutavault. He moves to combat and attacks Cal with Magda. Magda triggers and Ryan creates a treasure. Cal takes it, and in Ryan's second main phase, he casts Mana Vault. He casts Clock of Omens. In response, Zach taps his Spire of Industry to help cast Mana Drain, countering Clock of Omens. Ryan casts a Dwarven Trader and ships the turn to Mike. Mike draws and casts Elvish Reclaimer. He follows up with a Jiraga Tree Speaker. He gives the turn to Zach. Zach draws, and in his first main phase, he adds 4 colorless through Mana Drain. He plays a Mana Confluence for turn. He taps his Mana Confluence and Spire of Industry to help cast his commander, Narset, Enlightened Master. With a table on high alert, he passes the turn. Cal draws and casts Lotus Petal. He casts Glinthorn Buccaneer. The table hopes that someone might have an answer, and with no such luck, Glinthorn resolves. Cal moves to combat and attacks Zach with Malcolm and Mike with Glinthorn. They take it, and Malcolm triggers, creating 2 treasures. Still in combat, Cal activates Glinthorn Buccaneer, discarding a card. Glinthorn triggers, deals a damage to each opponent, Malcolm triggers, creates 3 treasures, and then Cal draws a card. Using his treasures, he presents a loop, repeating this process until his opponents are dead. Let's do one more, shall we? In this game, Cal brings back Malcolm and Tana, and his opening hand contains a Keen Sense, Spire Garden, Finehorn Elves, Exotic Orchard, Glinthorn Buccaneer, Noxious Revival, and a Misty Rainforest. Ryan brings back Magda, and his opening hand contains a Mox Opal, Metallic Mimic, Ashnod's Transmigrant, Enslaved Dwarf, 2 Mountains, and a Goblin Welder. Mike brings back Yeva, and his opening hand contains a Worldly Tutor, Elvish Spirit Guide, Finehorn Elves, Snow-Covered Forest, Fierce Empath, Woodland Bellower, and his London Mulligan is a Reclamation Sage. Zach brings back Narset, and his opening hand contains a Mox Diamond, Spire of Industry, City of Traders, Gemstone Caverns, Cataclysm, Torch Courier, and a Part the Water Veil. And Ryan gets to start us off. But Zach has a pre-game action and puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Part the Water Veil. Ryan draws a card for turn and plays a Mountain. He casts a Mox Opal. He casts Enslaved Dwarf. He passes. Mike draws a card for turn and plays a Snow-Covered Forest. He casts Finehorn Elves and ships the turn to Zach. Zach draws and plays a Spire of Industry. He casts Torch Courier and moves to combat. He attacks Cal with his Torch Courier. Cal takes it, and Zach passes the turn. Cal draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a tropical island onto the battlefield. He casts a Finehorn Elves, and with nothing else, he passes. Ryan draws and plays a mountain. He casts his commander, Magda, Brazen Outlaw. He moves to combat and attacks Zach with Enslaved Dwarf. Magda triggers, and Ryan creates a treasure. Zach takes it, and Ryan gives the turn to Mike. Mike draws and exiles Elvish Spirit Guide to add a green. He casts Yisan the Wanderer Bard. He ships the turn. Zach draws and casts Mox Diamond, discarding City of Traders. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He cracks his LED, discarding his hand, and adds 3 red. He casts his commander, Narset, Enlightened Master. He sacrifices Torch Courier to give Narset haste. He moves to combat and attacks Cal with Narset. Narset triggers, and Zach exiles Azorius Signet, Delay, Wooded Foothills, and a Tundra. Cal takes it, and in his second main phase, Zach casts Azorius Signet. The table breathes a sigh of relief, and with nothing else, Zach passes. Cal draws and plays a Spire Garden. He casts his commander, Malcolm, Keen-Eyed Navigator. He passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with Magda and Enslaved Dwarf. Magda triggers, and he creates 2 treasures. Zach takes it, and in Ryan's second main phase, he casts Final Fortune. The table gets nervous since Narset was supposed to be the one taking extra turns. Final Fortune resolves, and Ryan gets an extra turn. He ships the turn to himself. Ryan draws and moves to combat. He attacks Zach with Magda and Enslaved Dwarf. Magda triggers, creating 2 treasures. Zach takes it, and in Ryan's second main phase, he taps Mox Opal for red. He sacrifices 5 treasures to activate Magda. He fetches up a Clock of Omens onto the battlefield. He follows up by casting Metallic Mimic. The entire table really starts to sweat as the combo pieces get assembled. Metallic Mimic resolves, and Ryan names Dwarf as it enters. He taps both Metallic Mimic and Clock of Omens to activate Clock of Omens, targeting Metallic Mimic. Since Mimic is a dwarf, Magda triggers and Ryan creates a treasure. Then Ryan untaps Metallic Mimic. Next, Ryan taps his newly created treasure and Metallic Mimic again to activate Clock of Omens, creating a treasure through Magda and untapping Mimic. He can now repeat this process of tapping Mimic and his treasure to create a new treasure, then untap Mimic. This creates a loop of infinite tapped treasures. Ryan then sacrifices treasures through Magda to fetch up a Mana Crypt onto the battlefield and a Mox Amber onto the battlefield. Ryan sacks treasures through Magda to fetch up Sensei's Divining Top onto the battlefield. He activates the top to draw a card, putting it on top of its library. Ryan now presents another loop where he sacrifices treasures, fetches top onto the battlefield, activates top, drawing a card and putting top on top. Using this loop, he can draw cards in his deck. He draws until he finds the card he needs. He casts Zorn. With Zorn on the battlefield, Ryan is now able to loop Metallic Mimic and Clock of Omens to generate infinite tapped treasures and untapped treasures. After making roughly 1 billion treasures, he casts Lightning Bolt, targeting Mike. He follows up with an Elixir of Immortality. He activates Elixir, gaining 5 life, shuffling his graveyard into his library, including Lightning Bolt. He shows yet another loop where he draws Lightning Bolt and Elixir of Immortality through his top, casts Lightning Bolt, and then shuffles it back in with Elixir. He repeats the process until finally the table is dead. Ladies and gentlemen, what an amazing set of games. Congrats to each player on their wins. In Game 1, Zach's win was inevitable with Narset attacking. Not only was he able to win with Narset, but in each other game tonight, there was a possibility of being able to resolve an attack trigger and then possibly close out the game. Even though the deck is a bit seasoned, it was great to see new tricks from a truly unique commander. Cal had quite the lucky streak with Glenhorn in his opening hand twice in a row. He did a great job during Game 2. It goes to show how powerful decks can be even without Thassa's Oracle. Ryan had a fantastic win through Magda, as the only real setup needed was to get a dwarf into play and make 5 treasures. Magda's ability resolve by using Metallic Mimic to essentially go infinite really showcased Magda in a beautiful light tonight. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.